very pivotal moment for us as a team was around the branding or the rebranding of our school and how we handled that. I think that we were able to see a moment of solidarity amongst the team and thinking about, here was something that every stakeholder at the table really put forth a lot of work in, but namely Office of Communications, and thinking about all of the work that went into it, and yet all of the challenge that we still faced. And in the past, I could think of a scenario like that happening, and we would have reacted differently. I think there would have been a more sort of triage need. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to bandage it? But I think that even though there were a lot of emotions, we all kind of took a step back and really questioned, well, what does this mean? And instead of taking the response personally, really thinking about, well, what could we have done differently in order to have a greater impact? And the one exercise that we did as a team with the sort of implementation quadrant, where you had culture of climate and explicitness, like that is just so clarifying in many ways, and it allowed us to kind of engage in a conversation that said, okay, I could see where we had our strong points, but here were the areas of opportunity that really held it back from having the amount of depth that it should have had. And that quadrant has been something that our lower school teams have, used a lot. And I'll give you one specific example. So we've been having a lot of conversation around affinity groups and whether or not young children are ready, or is it age appropriate for children of that age to engage in affinity work. And at the end of the day, we know what the research points to, but we also know what the community is ready for. So I think about this same decision maybe 5 years ago, and how when we did it 5 years ago, um, nationally, the climate, the temperature was in a different place. We were in a different place as a school, and so it didn't necessarily have the attention that it had now. And just sort of thinking about all of those different variables, it caused us to make a move that the lower school doesn't necessarily always make. I think that sometimes we have the tendency to kind of dive all in, which is okay because there's a courage in that. But I think there's also a lot of backtracking that tends to happen when you don't really think through strategically the impact of the decisions that you're making. And so, just sort of that thought of, we're making this decision, but it's not happening in a vacuum, right? So if this is to be implemented, what are all of the possible things that it's connected to? And it allowed us to say, okay, let's take a small bet on this. Let's see if we can pilot this amongst fourth and fifth grade students, make it voluntary, talk about our rationale, give the power of why are we doing this, and then get some feedback from it. And if we are to grow this, use that feedback as a diagnostic and say, okay, next year, 17, 18, we want to go and take this next step, but here's what we've learned. And just being a lot more informed about the decisions that we make, and it feels, again, more freeing, rather than when you jump in, there's that moment of passion where you are so focused on the thing that you're about to do and you're excited about it, but then there's that moment of anxiety that I think kind of overtakes it when you're worried about what's going to happen afterwards. But I think when you move in a more strategic way, you feel more reassured in why you've made the decisions that you've made, but then you also know that this isn't the end of it. It's just the kind of beginning, and things are going to evolve from here. So.
I think that this work has actually been really important both in my relationship to our leadership team as well as to my own. In terms of our leadership team, I would say that there are multiple different things that I could discuss, but the feeling of partnership and in having a group of people that I know I can go to and really delve into not just the issue at hand, but how does this test or challenge our leadership, and how might we think about that together? It is very helpful, and I think that I also see the members of our leadership team in slightly different ways as leaders, and we're sort of all in this together. And there's something very comforting and also very inspiring, I think, about that. In terms of my own team, I would say the piece that I feel most excited about, and that I hope that they feel most excited about, is the time and attention that I pay specifically to their development and growth as leaders. I certainly never had that as someone, you're a leader because someone gives you the title and that's your job. And so you go about, doing the work and learning along the way. I think the deliberate and thoughtful experience that I hope my team and all of our teams are having with time and attention paid to their development as leaders is meaningful. And we're doing that in a lot of ways, both through, I think, understanding what coaching truly means. One of the things we talk about and that I think about both for them and that they now, I think about for their teams is who is the person that's least qualified to do the work? And that frees them up to, I think, be more strategic, also to take time to understand that leadership is a journey, it is a process, both of personal and professional growth. And so how do I want to think about that? How am I going to invest in myself? And, I think it's also allowed us to think creatively about what that looks like in the workplace beyond what your job itself simply challenges you to do. So from creating an OIA collaboration project where we have teamed every single person within the advancement office with a faculty member that allows them to have connection to mission, to see the school and the institution through the eyes and the lens of someone who fulfills a different role here. That's been critically important. Those faculty members are also leaders, and so having partnerships with them I think is really great. We also we have a series of task forces that digs into project-based work that's really important in terms of moving us forward. I would say primarily in strategically deep ways. Those are chaired either by members of those leadership teams or frankly even a level below them within the organization. And so in other words, there's opportunities to learn and grow and develop as a leader, not just outside of here at conferences and things, but also here. How do you motivate a group? How do you set goals? How do you then march forward to those goals? And when things are off course, what do you do? How does that feel? How does that work? And then having people who are supporting you along the way to help you be successful, I think is important. And those are things that I think previously we would have just done ourselves.